Welcome to Beyond Polite. Today's guest is Terry Bumgarner. I met Terry during my time at CMT, and he's been a mentor to me ever since. Terry's spent more than 4 decades in broadcast television, beginning as a sportscaster in the late 1970s before moving into local news and then recognizedly programming at CMT. We talk about his journey from a shy kid to the broadcast booth, the lessons he learned over a lifetime in television, all the technology that he's seen, and most importantly, we talk about why he's convinced that way back then, his hair looked just like Justin Bieber's. You're going to want to hear this. Here's my conversation with Terry Bumgarner, aka Tear Bear. Tear Bear! It's Tear Bear time. Tear Bear, I don't even know when I started calling Tear Bear, when we started. Do you remember? Because
I don't remember for sure, and I don't remember if it was you or if it was Anna or who it was exactly, but it ended up coming to that. So now that's about all I answer to. I'll tell you one actual artist who called me that once, and that was Luke Bryan. And he never heard you all call me that, so I think he just did it because it rhymed. But
yes.
But yeah. Anyway.
Okay, look at us and Luke Bryan. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, Tear Bear, before we get into all the stuff, I have a question that I'm starting the podcast with just to kind of break the ice, and is, what kind of kid were you growing up?
I was a very shy kid. I was scared of adults, pretty much all adults. I liked playing sports above all other things. I was okay. I didn't get into a whole lot of trouble. Just the usual kid sort of stuff, but nothing too bad. I think most guys probably do at least 5 to 10 really, really stupid things that they practically kill themselves doing. And I probably did that too. But for the most part, I tried to follow the rules.
That's so crazy to hear you say that you were shy, and then you get into an industry that you have to be not shy.
Well, I was, and I still am, and doing a little self, psychoanalysis. I suspect that part of the reason that I did this is because people can't reject you; they have to talk to you if you're interviewing them.
Exactly.
So they can't just turn their back and walk away.
It's the power dynamic. Yeah, you were you're sitting down. Love that.
Exactly. So it might be that a little bit, but I'm uncomfortable, in a room full of people that I don't know. I can't walk into a problem. I'm not a life of the party sort of a guy. I can't walk in and just, hey, I'm Terry.
Did you always know that you wanted to work in broadcast media, or how the heck did you get into this world?
No, I didn't always know that I wanted to do it. I've tried to think back. I can't remember exactly the origin. I know that I didn't know what I wanted to major in when I went to college. But I did have a friend who started working at the campus radio station, went to the University of Oklahoma. We had a radio station there, and it operated as a regular, it was not, at that time, it was a regular commercial radio station. I had a friend who was starting in that. He was working as a disc jockey there, read the news from time to time, and I thought, well, that sounds like fun. So I went and did it and got started in that way. I did always kind of in the back of my head kind of want to be a sportscaster because I loved sports. I loved watching games. I loved listening to games on the radio back in the day when people used to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, just sort of the excitement of that and being the guy that was able to bring that to people, I sort of wanted to be that. So I think that's what really got me started. And the college radio station was sort of my entry to it. And then I think my first paying job was probably at a little bitty radio station in a town called Chickasha, Oklahoma, which was 15 miles, about a 20-minute drive from Norman, from my hometown. And I got a job as a disc jockey, and I did play-by-play for the high school teams. and a little bit of everything there.
Terror Bear, you
Yeah.
were not a DJ. You were a DJ Terror Bear in the mix.
Yeah, well, yeah. You can ask Judy. She says I was really bad,
Oh
but
my gosh.
I did it there, and I did it at KGOU was the college station. So I did it at the college station too. So at the college station, you're just picking and playing anything you want from albums and stuff, and it was
Right.
more rock and that kind of thing. The little station in Chickasha, they had a music library. It was mostly little 45s. You actually, in those days, you didn't use cassettes, or certainly didn't use CDs, and you certainly didn't use files because the internet had not been invented yet.
Oh my gosh. I always forget this. I like for people listening, every time I tell Terror, when he first like showed us a picture of him as a baby, it was so hard to comprehend because I'm like, you were not a baby. You were born Terror Bear.
I, I
So
know
when you
I
say
was
like way back in those times, it's so hard to like comprehend.
I was not born with gray hair, you know.
Oh my gosh. Wait, Terror, what was like your favorite artist? Like what was your tune to play? Were you just playing Bruce Springsteen all the time on
I
replay?
did. I could play him, but I could. The thing is, you could mix it up any way you wanted. So I
Okay.
might play uh, Springsteen and Frank Sinatra and whatever, the Beatles. It was just a mixture, and in a small town, they're not. It's not all fragmented. You didn't have a wouldn't necessarily have a country station.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think hip hop had been invented yet either. But
Oh
you
my
couldn't have
gosh.
you couldn't have back in those days it would have been R&B, I guess, serving a similar audience. But
Yeah.
you couldn't you didn't have a station that just did this and just did that and just did this. The
Yeah, it was
stations
kind of like
all played a little
eclectic
bit of
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of what it got back to once everybody initially had iPods, and now they've got everything on their phone. You put it on mix, on shuffle or whatever. You create your own playlists. But in those days, you had to listen to whatever the guy sitting in the little booth did, and
Oh
I was the
my
guy sitting in the little booth there for a while.
Terror, I'm obsessed. Wait, also just to give a time frame, what year is this? Like when were you in college? 19.
I probably didn't start until maybe 73 or so. I don't think I did any of this my first year of college. So around
Okay.
1973, 74, somewhere in
Okay,
that.
so we're in the mid 70s. Oh
Yes.
my gosh, were the
Long,
70s crazy? What was
long
happening in the
before,
70s?
oh gosh, I don't know. I don't remember. A
Oh
long
my
time
gosh.
ago.
That's so crazy. I just want to be transported into this times. I would be in every like ABBA concert, as you know. Okay, Terber, so you were in this little radio station, and then how do you get to be, because then you were on TV, you were the sportscaster, right? How did you get
Well,
there?
not yet. Not
Not yet?
not
Okay,
there
walk
yet.
me
No.
through
So I
that
so I
timeline.
did I did the thing at the little radio station there, and then I got a job being a disc jockey in Norman at
Mhm.
Norman's little AM radio station. But I also learned a lesson there. There was uh, when I was a kid growing up we saw Oklahoma City television.
Okay.
And in Oklahoma City, like a lot of cities around the country, there was local programming. They had a local kids show. It was called Foreman Scotty and the Circle
Foreman.
4 Ranch. So the kids
Okay.
would all be there in the studio, and Foreman Scotty dressed up like a cowboy, and they would show pre-recorded stuff, and then they'd come back and they'd interview the kids, and they'd do all kinds of stuff like that. Well, every kid that grew up there watched that. Every kid wanted to be on the show, and me too. I was never on it, but I loved it. Well, anyway, fast forward, that wasn't on TV anymore. And at one point, they hired a new guy to be the disc jockey in the time slot after me. And it was Foreman Scotty.
Huh?
His name was Scott Powell, but he was an actor. He was a TV guy. That
Yeah.
show was over. He had to work. And so he was working as a disc jockey at this little station where I was,
Oh
which
my gosh.
taught me the lesson right off the bat that things come and they go, and
Mhm.
you could be a beloved personality and you
Mhm.
still got to earn a living. And sometimes you've got to go someplace you don't necessarily want to go
Mm,
and either try and build yourself up, or you're just feeding your family, or you're paying your bills or
mhm.
whatever. There's no shame in that, but it's not all fun and games, and you don't always get what you want.
Yeah, that's really good, Tara. Like, as you know, and especially, and we're going to get into it because those are some of my questions around that. Like, especially our industry has changed so much.
Oh,
And it's hard for some of us to kind of, in our generation and younger going through that. But you've always been good at saying that, like, it's all a season and you have to take what it is, like, never to feel shame to do what you're doing. So that's a really, neat example of that
yeah.
guy.
Well, and it's not easy because it's hard in this business
Hmm.
not to have a little bit of ego attached to what you
Yes.
do, and nobody wants to be knocked down a peg.
Hmm.
But sometimes it happens, and sometimes it's not the fault of that person. It's just the way things go.
After that, when you're there, what was your next job?
Well, somewhere along the line, I did want to do sports, and I wanted to
Mhm.
be like the play-by-play guy for a college or something like that. And it seemed like the guys that got that job were the guys that had a name from being on TV. They were like
Mhm.
local sportscasters on TV or whatever. So it seemed to me like maybe TV was the way to go. And I don't
Oh,
remember. I remember trying to get jobs. I don't remember how I finally got the first one, but it was at a little bitty. It was really sort of a news, like a news bureau in Ardmore, Oklahoma. Got to work there, and then eventually, so I did news, I did sports, I shot uh, stuff, I edited stuff, I did a little bit of everything,
yeah.
which ultimately helps you. And I don't think a lot of you find some people that start in a relatively big city and they're already sort of specialized. Well,
Hmm.
in a way, that's great, but in another way, doing a little bit of everything kind of helps you further down the road. Because
Yeah.
once I got to a place where I didn't have to edit or I didn't have to be the one who was shooting it, I knew how to do it, and
Hmm.
so I also knew how to sort of communicate to them what I wanted and what I
Yes.
thought it should be and why I wanted it and why I thought it should be that way. I felt
Yeah.
like I had a little bit of credibility because I'd done it before and I wasn't asking them to do anything that I hadn't already done.
You're doing news, you're doing all that. Oh my gosh, Tara, I always remember that video. I'm gonna have to try to find it on YouTube or somehow get it legal. There is like this video that lives somewhere on YouTube, and there's just like you go into the control room and there's like tapes and like it's just the 1970s. And when we saw that, it was just like archaic. But it's beautiful. To me, I love that because it's like, but I was like, oh, this is like vintage because we're used to like a little like SD card, and you were like they were like rolls like this. It's so crazy. So
Oh yeah. Well, during a I don't know, maybe a 15 or 20-year period, all of broadcasting and television went through so many changes. I got in on the absolute tail end of when you actually shot film for news and you took film out of the camera. It had to be developed.
oh my god.
You had to run it through the processor, the developer, which you had to do in the dark. And because if you expose it to light, it ruins it. So you had to do that, and then it had to be edited. You literally had to cut film and edit it, which is what they
When
did
you
with
say
movies too.
cut
You had to
film, like
splice it.
physically, like
Yes,
cut it,
physically. You physically cut it, which meant once it's cut, it's cut. You can't undo that,
like with a
really.
pair of scissors, and you cut.
Yeah.
Oh my
Oh, yeah.
gosh,
Actually, a razor blade usually is what you use.
this
And
is
then you
already
tape
giving
it.
me anxiety. Can you imagine? I'd
You
be like,
take
wait,
the
I want this back. I want to
well,
restore.
and what you used to do for news was, let's say you had an interview with somebody, and then you had footage. The guy that invented the term B-roll was you'd have to look this up, and I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was a guy named Don Hewitt who was
Okay.
the executive producer for a zillion years at 60 Minutes. I think he's the one that came up with the terminology. So you would put the interview, the sound bites, that would be your
Okay.
A roll, and then the other footage would be your B-roll, and they would roll it simultaneously, and then the director would they would cut between, it'd have a control panel there, and he would cut between the uh the two segments, like when you wanted to see the stuff. Uh, yeah,
Oh my
it was a
gosh.
different world, and then and then it progressed to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and then before you know it, here we are. We've got far better
Yeah,
video and editing stuff in our phones, all of us do, than what we had in the 70s.
yeah, no, that's why it's so crazy, like, all the changes, like, technologically that, like, you've lived through. That's why, I was just wondering, like, what was television production like before social media and smartphones? But you kinda answered all that because it's been so different, like and
Well,
you just had to adapt, right? You just, like, adapted every time
well, and
something new came along.
yeah, but we were, the good thing was you're adapting to something better every time.
Yeah,
It's not like if it took you and threw you back there and you had to adapt to the old stuff, that would really be hard. But
yeah,
and everybody was making all these changes at the same time, so it really
yeah.
wasn't that bad, and it was actually great. I mean, gosh, in those days nobody had cell phones hadn't been invented. So
My
if you
gosh.
went out somewhere, we had radios in the car, like old 1950s cop shows,
Oh
we
my
had
god.
two-way radios in the car, but that would only reach like to the edge of the city limits. So if
Yeah.
you had to go out of town, you were pretty much out of commission. Nobody knew where you were or what you were doing unless you
Honestly,
went and
Care
found.
Bear, I kinda wish that was we
Oh,
could bring that
yeah,
back.
no, it was nice. It was
Because
nice.
having this stuff around and you're just
Yeah.
everyone and it's like, I don't want anyone to know I wanna cross the city limits, and can you imagine just not having to talk to anyone? It's like now everyone just knows where you are,
I
but we actually wanted to go back really quick because even the beginning when you said you were like a shy kid, and then I was like, "Oh my gosh," and then you went into this industry, but when you started getting into television and, having a mic in your hand and having to interview people, did that, like, come naturally? How did you kinda or were you still shy, or how did you just, like, channel into that?
I still was, but somehow or another, again, it's the thing that because you're there representing whatever the organization
Mhm,
is, or whatever the channel is, or whatever the network is, you kind of know you're not going to be rejected. And
mhm.
I never did anything that was sort of adversarial, like could happen sometimes in a news situation, maybe where you're trying to interview somebody that doesn't, a politician
Yeah.
is, or somebody's, been charged with something and they're coming out and you're trying to stick a mic in there. I never had to do that kind of
Okay,
thing.
yeah.
I was talking to athletes after a ball game, or later on, music artists who were, frankly needing the publicity and stuff. So that's not necessarily apples to apples in terms of
Yeah.
being shy, I guess.
Did you ever meet, like, like, an athlete that you really, like, loved or something when you were in that time since you loved sports?
I I did. I met very briefly Mickey Mantle, who was a baseball player, who was look him up sometime.
Okay.
Uh, And in fact, in the world of baseball cards and that sort of stuff,
Yes.
a Mickey Mantle, like 1956, whenever he was a rookie, those if you have one of I don't collect those stuff, but I've seen stories about them. If you had a Mickey Mantle rookie card from 1956 in great condition, you're talking $1 million or more, for that
Oh.
kind of thing.
Oh my
He was
god.
he was the guy. He was the guy way back when, and he was from Oklahoma, and I was from Oklahoma. So, and I
Dang.
met him at I don't know, some press conference or something, but it was very briefly. It was just hi, how you doing, and that was it.
$1,000,000. Terror Bear, I really have to find that minted condition baseball card I have of
Yeah,
you.
I
Terror Bear has a baseball card out there. It's somewhere in a box. I have it. I'm gonna try to sell it and just be done. I'm like, oh, I'm a millionaire.
yeah, I don't think so.
But Terror Bear, you have been able to spend your entire career because I mean, from the beginning, right after college to retirement, you stayed in media and production. And that feels so rare now because as you know,
Yeah,
people like my generation and younger, we're not going to get to experience that. We already didn't, there were so many layoffs and we all have to start pivoting careers. So I don't know if you've had time now that you've retired to reflect on that, but what is it like having built, a lifelong career in a world that changed so much around you and you were able to just, do it all? Because, yeah, people don't get to do that now.
They don't, and I have thought about it, and I feel bad that it doesn't exist for other people. I would
Yeah.
like for other people to get to do the things that I did. And interestingly enough, when I'm around other people that are, roughly of my era, we talk about that sort of stuff. We got to
Yeah.
do things that you and others don't get to do and
Yeah, we
won't
won't
get to
never,
do.
we'll never, yeah, won't
No,
get to do.
no, because that's gone. I went and
Mm.
spoke to high school kids here.
Wow.
When was that? A couple of months ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the background on that is that Judy is part of a program that they do called Senior to Senior, and
Okay.
so they get seniors like us, old people, hooked up with seniors in high school,
So
and
cute.
they do several different things through the year, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 different things, so that you can get to know each other, and maybe both learn from each other. Us old people get to sort of feel relevant and be relevant, and sort of help mentor, and then the
Yeah.
young people get some guidance from somebody other than their teachers and their parents. They wanted somebody to speak to their radio and TV class. Well, this high school has,
Yeah.
a better television studio than than a lot of places I've worked. They got a really nice setup. They got teleprompters and they got
I'm
3 cameras.
sure.
Anyway, I said, well, okay. So I went and talked to them, and one of the things I was thinking about before I went was, in the 6 years since I worked full time,
Hmm.
even in that 6 years, everything has changed
Yes.
drastically.
Yes.
And then if you take, from the time I was their age to now, well, that's like we had to ride horseback to school or something. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
zillion
back
years
in the
ago.
Gilded Age. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, that was one thing I told them was that, the negative for them is
Mm.
they're not going to get, it's not going to be what it was with me. And you're not going to get to do some of the things I did. But the positive is that you don't have to work anywhere to tell a story with
Mm.
video and whatever. You can do it on your phone. You can post it on YouTube, and you could do it every day if you want to. And
Yeah.
maybe you can get a following. And the negative to that is, so can everybody else. And so, how do you cut
Yes.
through the clutter? And how do you
Yes.
get noticed? But it's just a different world, and they've got to find their way through that world the way I had to find my way through our world. In that way, it's no different.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to figure it out for themselves. But, uh, you know, I had so many good opportunities. I was so lucky that I started doing country music right at the beginning of the 90s. And
Oof.
Nashville at that time, country music was just, I read all these stories now about, oh, country music going mainstream. And it's so, well, it did that in the 90s too. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
but mostly dragged through it, courtesy of Garth Brooks more than anything else. I mean, he's the one that kind of blew up the whole thing. I can remember 15 years ago, 20 years ago, doing a story with the Mavericks. And I was talking to, I think it was Raul and Robert Reynolds, who was still with him at the time.
Hmm.
And they had a video guy that was starting to shoot some stuff. And I said, you guys aren't going to need to talk to guys like me pretty soon. And they said, oh yeah, we will. We'll always want that. And I said, no, you can do it yourself,
Yeah.
and that's what it's come to. That's what it is now. They can do it
Yeah.
themselves. And that way they can only put out what they want out. It's self-edited.
No, but that's a perfect segue because you were saying, oh my gosh, country music in the 90s. And I want to, transition into your CMT and country music industry because I actually don't know, how did you get the opportunity to start with CMT and how did you get to Nashville and started with country music?
Well, in when I was working in Wichita Falls, Texas, and
Hmm.
I was a weekend sports anchor, and 3 days a week I like shot uh, went out with the news reporters, and I was a shooter. We were the smallest market in the country, I think, to get a show called PN Magazine that was hot at that point. I don't guess she went there to be this, but Lorianne Crook,
Okay.
later of Crook and Chase fame, her first job in television was at that same station. So she and I knew each other from that. I shot some of her first stories, doing news or whatever. So
Okay.
then she went on to Nashville. I went to Huntington, but she became this host of really one of the very first shows to cover country music. And it was
Okay.
on TNN, the Nashville network. And that was in, late 80s, early 90s. And when I moved to Nashville, she was one of the first people I called. I'd seen the show. I thought, well, that would be fun to do that. And I ultimately ended up getting a job with her on her
Okay.
show. I was initially a producer, then I was on air. I produced my own stories, and then that's what ultimately led to you know T&M went away. Their shows, but I did shows for 7 or 8 years. Most of the old footage you've ever seen of me was that those shows.
You just, Dear Bear, you were just like in the 90s. You were interviewing, you know how much I love the 90s
Oh,
because
I know it.
so
I know it.
Tara actually did oh my gosh, what was it? What was it called? We did a project at CMT and I was, a PA at the time. And was it 90s
We just
country?
I don't remember what we called it, but yeah, it was 90s country
Yeah.
stuff.
And basically, he just like we would find 90s artists like their biggest hit and just kind of do I don't know, like a package around that. And Terber somehow, I don't know, maybe I think all the other girls at the time that worked there, they were just worried about like Florida Georgia Line. I could care less. I was like, I need to go see Joe DiMessina. They're like, who? Because I just love 90s country and I loved it. So you took
Yeah.
me along to all these interviews. I mean, that's how I met Leanne Womack. And oh my gosh, no, there were so many. I'm trying to remember who we did, but I think we went to Diamond Rio and who else? I'm trying to think. Vince Gill. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, so many. But that was such an amazing experience for me. And that's why I remember I was like so young. And then I would just go, behind you and you would just sit down and be like, hey, and like talk to all these artists. So like, and it was like Terror Bear. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. He's the coolest guy ever.
Well,
So
see but that's a result of what I was talking about earlier. We
yeah.
did so many things with them, and we would be on the road with them. And if you're out there and you're not in Nashville doing something, but
No,
if
you
you're
would build
out
that
there,
relationship.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's because when you're there, you're like the only person from home that they see, and
Yes.
and so, gosh, I remember one year at the Grammys, the first time, maybe it was the second time it was in LA. It had been in New York prior to that, so it was right around mid '90s, I get no late
Yeah.
'90s. Tim McGraw and Faith Hill were there, and we were. It was the first time I ever went and covered the Grammys, they didn't have the big red carpet and what we're used to at every award show now. They
Yeah.
just had an entrance where the artist went in, and some
Okay.
media would gather there and try and get some interviews and stuff. But they didn't have people like building sets and
Yeah.
all the stuff that we see now. I remember yelling specifically at Tim and Faith. And then they came right over because it's, oh, look, there's somebody we know, instead
Yeah.
of all these faces that they didn't know. So you kind of got those relationships in a way that 10 years later that didn't happen very much.
And you worked around so many major, well, country artists, but artists in general. What surprised you like the most about famous people? I don't know if maybe like, especially when the cameras were off, or what was it like just being around these like celebrities?
Well, I didn't get surprised much because, as you may remember, I had an uncle who was an actor.
I was going to bring it up
And
later, but let's bring
well,
him up now. Let's bring him up now because this is a really fun fact.
yes, as you all like to call him, old Noah.
Old Noah. Let's bring up old Noah. Oh my
I never got
gosh.
a chance. I never got a chance to tell him that. I think he had already passed away by the time you
Oh,
all
you
started
would have
that.
loved it. Terry is the nephew of a James Gardner who plays old Noah in The Notebook, you guys. So obviously he's way more famous than that. But like my generation, we didn't know, his Hollywood, like from when he was really famous in Hollywood. So I remember, yeah, Terry Bear was like, well, do you guys know who James Gardner is? And we're like, all the girls were like, no. And he was like, he was in The Notebook. And we're like, wait, Ryan Gosling? Like you're related to, and he was like, no, the old Noah. And we were like, your uncle is old Noah. And he stayed old Noah, but he's more than that. He's James Garner.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I had, so I knew somebody he was famous when I was
Yeah.
4 years old.
So we're kind of
So
used to that lifestyle. Like you knew about it from going to Hollywood
yeah,
and stuff.
I had seen it. I had been around it
Yeah.
a little bit, and I knew that ultimately they're just regular people like the rest of us.
Yeah.
So I kind of already had a little bit of insight into that. So I don't think I was necessarily surprised at anyone. I was surprised that I was in proximity to that fame and was interacting. I mean, one of the first things that I really remember doing there, and this was working with Crick and Chase, and I was a producer,
Mhm.
and Lorianne and Charlie were going to do an interview by satellite, and so I went with the satellite truck to George Jones' house,
Oh my
and
gosh.
we set up for the interview. And then Lori and Charlie were in the studio. They actually did the interview, but I had to
Mhm.
go there, be on site, get them all hooked up, make sure the lighting was good,
Yeah.
which we did very early, as you know, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I remember we got there, and two things happened. One, his wife, Nancy, evidently I looked just like her nephew. And so she said that. And then from that point on, the rest of the time that I ever interacted with her, I don't remember what her nephew's name was, Randy or something. She always called me her
Yeah.
nephew's name. But
You
then
were
the other
Randy.
thing was, yes, and maybe that kind of was an icebreaker or whatever,
Mhm.
but we had a half an hour or so to kill before it was time. And they said, well, you want something to drink? And, we got like Diet Coke or
With
whatever.
George Jones?
So she brings me a Diet Coke, and I find myself sitting on the couch with George and Nancy Jones watching TV in their house. And I thought, how in the world did I get here? You
That's
know,
so cool.
it just, I couldn't have ever imagined that.
I was gonna ask, do you have like a favorite memory?
There were things that I got to do as a result of all of this that I look back and go, I can't believe I ended up doing that. I interviewed Elton John one time,
No, you did
and
not. I did not know that.
oh, you didn't know
Elton
that?
John. No, Tear
Yeah,
Bear.
it was
Oh,
he was doing he did a video. I don't remember what the song was, but he did a video
what?
uh that he tried to market to country, and
Okay.
CMT was going to play the video.
Oh my gosh. Do you think it was
And
get back, honky cat,
no,
get back
no, it
the
was
blue?
not that. It was
Oh,
beyond. It was later than that. It was in New York. He was working on the music for a Broadway play, which is why he was there. It was sort of like a junket. So I remember you asked me about famous people and that kind of stuff. I
hmm.
didn't get nervous around most famous people, but I was nervous with him
Yeah.
for two reasons. One, he seemed to me like a guy who wouldn't really put up with stupid stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
much,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was number one. And number two, what could I possibly ask him that would be? But I would feel like um, uh, I don't know if you've ever seen the famous Chris Farley interview with on Saturday Night Live with Paul McCartney, where he goes,
God.
"You remember when you were in the Beatles?"
Oh my God.
Well, I was afraid I was going to be that guy,
Yeah.
and fortunately I wasn't. But and you may remember this, I easily tripped over things. Walking in, trying to get into my space, I had to get like under a light and
Oh
then
my
over
gosh.
a C stand and whatever. And I kind of tripped on the C stand, which I thought was going to fall.
Oh
And
my
I thought
gosh.
I'm going to kill Elton John here. But he, but he was very nice, and he said something. I can't imitate his British accent, but he said, "Oh,
Okay.
they just they made this room for tiny people. Don't worry about it."
For
And
tiny dancers, you could have been like,
yeah, tiny
"Oh,
dancers.
the
That's right.
tiny dancer." Oh,
But
I would
anyway,
have. That's so cool.
so I got interviewed him. So that was a moment there.
That is a
That was
moment.
oh, well, and again, I talk about luck. I was lucky, and I guess part of this has to do with longevity too.
Hmm.
I was there at the tail end of some of the real legends,
Yeah.
uh, Johnny Cash. I got to interview Johnny Cash a couple of times. I interviewed Merle Haggard several times, actually. Guys like that, or women like that. I actually interviewed Tammy Wynette once.
No, you did not.
I
And
did.
Loretta? Did you do Loretta?
Loretta, yeah, Loretta was good. I interviewed Loretta once when she was in her pajamas.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
She and I don't remember what year Olympics it was. It was Winter Olympics though, and she carried. She was originally from Kentucky, and when
Yes.
they always take the torch all the way across the country and stuff, and different
Yes.
people carry it. Usually they incorporate celebrities in that,
Okay.
and she was going to carry it through I think Louisville or somewhere in Kentucky, and so I went up to cover that, and we did the interview on her bus and it was cold,
Uh,
and so she kept whatever the top she had on, but she just had like long
like
long
sweatpants or
yeah,
PJs?
pajamas. No, they're pajama bottoms. She had on, but of course now people wear pajama bottoms out in public, but they didn't in
Yeah.
those days.
Yeah.
No, she was just in her pajamas, and
Oh my
she was
gosh.
great.
But Tara, no, you literally lived such a dream. And honestly, I'm just like, it's like nostalgic to hear that because I know like I'll, in certain capacity, like probably won't be able to have a career like that, but it just like sounds amazing, that I get to hear all of that through you. But after spending, so many years in television and now you're retired, just was it difficult figuring out like who Terry was like outside of the industry? And you've just been working your entire life.
Well, yes and no, because I do have I find most of my friends,
Hmm.
the people that I'm comfortable with, and are people that I worked with, and I think a lot of that is because we shared all of those experiences,
Yeah.
and our work. Anytime we get together, we ultimately start talking about this trip to so and so, or you remember when we were in,
Yeah.
New York and we did whatever we did, because our job consisted of these little adventures that we went on
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, that's what we did for a living. I tell
Yeah.
people all the time here, I never really worked for a living. I never,
Mm.
all the people I'm around here are former business people or whatever. They
Yeah.
they made a lot more money than I did, but I don't think they had near as much fun.
You had fun. Yeah, it was an industry with a lot of fun and you got to, live all that. So that's so cool. But now that you're retired, tell me what has a retirement been like for you? Are you just golfing every day? Do you like it? Or do you miss
uh
working?
I don't miss working. In fact, just talking the other day about gosh, how do people get through a 5-day work week? you
Care
know
Bear, I don't even work like that anymore, like, as you
yeah,
know, and it's just, like,
yeah.
obviously, like, after COVID, everything changed, but that's why I'm like, "How did we go into an office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? Someone please tell me how we survived, and we did it, but it's just so different." But, no, that's why
I
every time
just
I text you,
yeah
you're like, "I'm out golfing. Can I text you later?" I'm like,
well
"Oh, what a
I do
life."
I play golf usually 4 times a week, sometimes
Ooh,
three.
okay.
I play tennis 1 time a week and sometimes two. It depends. I'm still doing some work because I'm still working on these podcasts, but I'm not going to Nashville. Whoops.
There
Is-
goes again.
Yeah,
I'll
I
add those to
guess
the bloopers. Yeah.
I guess my ear canals don't fit the AirPods very well. Anyway,
No,
and
Tara, you worked hard and long. Yeah, like you get to now relax to the lemonade and Judy and your dog and just like, don't call me. I would get a
yeah,
flip
well.
phone as I was you. Just get your flip phone out.
Yeah, I'll get my flip phone out.
Tara, you've lived through so many changes, in work, in media, in life. For people in my generation and those that are listening that might be younger, who feel uncertain about their life, because I've come to you with this before. Like I've definitely feel like everything's changing. Like I don't know where I fit
Yeah,
in.
well,
But
and it is.
whether either right now or the future, what piece of wisdom would you want to pass down? Like what advice would you tell them? Because I feel like like what really matters in the end. What would you say?
Well, I don't know about that for sure. But one thing I would say, and I think I've said this to you, especially in the media world, if it's not going well for you now,
Hmm.
everything changes and it changes fast, and it might change for the better. For instance, if you're working somewhere and your boss leaves and you get a new boss and you hate
Mm,
the new boss. Well, if you can just kind of grit your teeth and get through the new boss, guess what? They're probably not going to be there more than a couple of years either.
yeah.
And then you can adjust and hopefully it will get better. Anything that gets worse has the same kind of possibility of getting better if you can just hang in there. The other thing is, and I don't, gosh, I feel like things are changing so fast. I don't know exactly how you keep up with it, but you got to adjust.
Yeah.
You got to find something you want and that you want to do, and then go for it. Uh,
Yeah.
I was lucky. I found something that I really liked to do, and at first I thought that would be like doing play on ball games, and I did like it, and I got to do it. But I ended up liking the stuff that we did at CMT even more.
Yeah.
So you never know when you'll just stumble into the right thing,
I love
but
that.
then you got to be ready if you do, and
Yeah.
take advantage of it. I think through the ages, people have said the same sorts of things. They've
Right.
always said, "Oh, it's not like it was when I was a kid," right?
Yeah.
And it probably isn't. But you know, the thing that a person may be complaining about because it's not like when they were a kid,
Hmm.
30 or 40 or 50 years later, people will be looking back at that and saying, well, that was the great time. Those were the golden years. And those
Yeah.
were the years that you were complaining about back
I
then.
know. I feel
So,
like that's just the cycle of life. Cause even that, I remember
yeah,
when, like 10 years ago, and, we were starting on CMT, like at least, for me and out of college. And, it got to a point where I was like, oh, I'm so tired. Oh my gosh. I'm like early 20s, like complaining, like, no. And then now I'm like, oh my gosh, those were the good old times. Like, look what I was doing. I think it's just such a part of being a human that then you reflect. But I think, like you said, I don't know, and maybe I'm like paraphrasing, but I would add even that, like, whatever you're living, like really embrace it and enjoy it because it does go fast. It's just
yeah, it
like,
does. It,
and then
it,
it's like that
it
was the good old days. So it's like be present in it because, yeah.
yeah, I look at stuff and I go, that was 10 years ago, right? No, it was
Mhm.
40 years ago.
Oh my
It
gosh.
does. It goes ridiculously quickly. And, yeah, so you better find something to enjoy every day, if you can. And there's some days that's a little hard,
Yeah.
but yeah, you gotta try and do it because you get to be. My next birthday will be number 73,
Oh my gosh. Tear Bear. Are
so
you going
you
to
get
party
to
hard? What are you going to do to party?
no, you don't do anything. You don't do anything too strenuous at this point. Uh, I'm just trying to stay on my feet as much as as
Oh
much as
my
I
gosh.
can.
I love that.
Uh, but you will get to a point sometime, long time from now, but sometime you'll get to a point where you'll realize you just don't have that much time left. So you better enjoy
Mhm.
it all, and you might as well
Guaranteed.
start enjoying it while you're still young too. So
Yeah.
you know,
I love
have a good
that.
time.
Taylor, you're just a man full of wisdom, a man full of gray hair that used to be very black. I really you need to send me a photo so I can add it. I'm going to like insert it.
Think, although his wasn't black, think early Justin Bieber.
Oh, 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 Taylor, you're comparing. What? What are you
Yeah,
talking about?
that's what my hair looks like. Early Justin Bieber.
Okay. Okay, this is so funny. I'm literally going to do like a side by side and people will get to
Yeah.
compare. Do you think Tara Bear's hair used to look like Justin Bieber? Amazing. Wait, Tara, just to close out with this question, because I've been wanting to just know, what people are doing, but what is a hobby or just something that you've been into lately that you're just doing for fun?
Well, you see these guitars behind me? I'm trying to learn
Yeah.
how to play them again a little
No,
bit,
you are?
but I don't do it all the time because I don't want to subject my wife to my
Oh
attempts.
my God.
So like if she's gone somewhere, then I practice a little bit. I try and
Wait, also,
practice a little
Tara,
bit.
what do you mean again? You used to play guitar or what is this?
Well, I could bang out a few chords. I could not.
Okay.
I was not Vince Gill.
Well, okay.
Yeah. No, I could play play just a little tiny
Tara,
bit.
I'm so surprised I didn't know this about you. Okay, well, keep practicing because next episode we'll have you and you're just gonna serenade us with a song.
Well, I didn't do it for the longest time, partly because I lived in Nashville. It just sort of seemed pointless in Nashville,
Yeah.
because everybody you bumped into was really, really good.
No, honestly, kudos to you. I remember, yeah, I tried so many times to pick up the guitar, and my excuse was that my fingers were too short. I was like, I have a little hand, it's not going to work out. So I was like, whatever, I'll just sing. So that was
Yeah,
my thing.
I had an excuse too, but we got to throw the excuses out.
Yeah. Oh
We got to
my
learn.
God.
Got to learn.
Tara Bear, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being on Beyond Polite. Thank you for sharing all the things. And I know I'll have you on again, but I'm just really happy that we were able to have this time and that you got on here and shared all your
Well,
awesome, famous stories.
I am thankful that you asked me to. It was
Of
fun.
course.
So it's always fun to relive the old times. Literally, it was my pleasure. I enjoyed it.